Hello, this is Nightline and I am Nadia Azmi. News making the headlines. Cabinet ministers set to take up challenge to restore economic confidence with integrity, transparency and accountability. Two Deputy Prime Ministers and 25 members of the Cabinet were sworn in before Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Bilasha at Istana Negara on Saturday. Also present at the presentation of instruments of appointment and the taking of the oath of office, loyalty and secrecy was Raja Permaisuri Agong Tunku Hajah Azizah Aminah Maimunah Iskandaria. The two Deputy Prime Ministers, Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi and Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof, were the first to take their oath of office. Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid is also holding the portfolio of Rural and Regional Development Minister, while Datuk Seri Fadilah also holds the portfolio of Plantation and Commodities. The second group comprised of Transport Minister Anthony Lok Siu Fuk, Agriculture and Food Security Minister Muhammad Sabu, Economy Minister Muhammad Rafizi Ramli, Local Government Development Minister Nga Kor Ming and Defence Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan. The third group consisted of Home Minister Senator Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail, Works Minister Datuk Seri Alexander Nanta Linggi, International Trade and Industry Minister Senator Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz, Higher Education Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Khalid Nordin and Science and Technology Minister Chang Lee Kang. The fourth group comprised Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Domestic Trade and Cost of Living, Datuk Seri Salahuddin Ayub, Minister of Law and Institutional Reform, Datuk Seri Azalina Othman Said, Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad, and Minister of Entrepreneur, Development and Cooperatives, Datuk Iwan Benedict. Foreign Minister Senator Datuk Seri Zamri Abdul Kadir, Tourism Minister Datuk Seri Tiong King Sing, Digital Communications Minister Fahmi Fazil, Education Minister Fadlina Siddiq and National Unity Minister Datuk Aaron Ago Anak Dagang were in the fifth group. The sixth and last group consisted of Religious Affairs Minister Senator Datuk Dr. Muhammad Naim Mukhtar, Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeo, Human Resources Minister VN Sivakumar, Health Minister Dr. Zaliha Mustafa, and Minister in the Prime Minister Department in charge of Sabah and Sarawak Affairs, Dato' Armizan Muhammad Ali. After being sworn in, the new ministers signed appointment documents, which were then attested by Chief Justice Tan Sri Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat and Chief Secretary to the Government, Datuk Sri Muhammad Zuki Ali. Also in attendance were Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim and his wife, Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Azizah Wan Ismail. Earlier, 4 ministers appointed to the Unity Government Cabinet were sworn in as senators. They took their oath of office before Dewan Negara President Tan Sri Rais Yatim at the Parliament House at 8:30 a.m. They are Pakatan Harapan Secretary General Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail and former Finance Minister Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz. The others are Barisan Nasional BN Secretary General Datuk Sri Zamri Abdul Kadir and Chief Sharia Court Judge Datuk Muhammad Naim Mukhtar. Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution, Datuk Sri Zamri and Datuk Muhammad Naim were sworn in as senators for their first term, while Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul was reappointed upon the consent of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Bilasha. Malaysia needs to continue the momentum of the nation's post-COVID-19 recovery. For that, the new cabinet of Datuk Sri Anwar is all set to take on this challenge.
Bagi saya, kita ketepikan masalah politik, perbezaan politik dan kita sama-sama realisasikan sebuah kerajaan perpaduan Malaysia yang sebenar untuk kepentingan rakyat. Dan bagi saya, soal titik bengek harus dikesampingkan bagi kita memberikan keutamaan pada rakyat dan untuk mewujudkan kestabilan pada negara. Bagi mengamit semula pelabur-pelabur asing untuk masuk ke negara ini dan juga menggalakkan DDI, Domestic Direct Investment, pelaburan dalam negara. Dan pada waktu yang sama kita harus melihat pasaran saham dan juga pertukaran asing, foreign exchange, yang pada hemat saya harus diperkukuhkan kerana fundamental ekonomi negara kita adalah kukuh. Lantas dari itu Pilihan raya telah berlalu. Hakikatnya sebuah kerajaan perpaduan Malaysia ini telah diwujudkan, maka saya fikir kita harus bersama-sama untuk membangunkan negara ini.
Saya kira tugas ini sudah pasti menjadi sejarah di mana pengiktirafan kepada Blok Borneo, Sarawak dan Sabah ke pertama menjadi timbalan Perdana Menteri, dan saya kira tanggungjawab ini ada besar dan sudah pasti harapan Sabah Sarawak khususnya begitu tinggi sekali, dan saya sedar saya bukanlah orang yang terbaik untuk jawatan ini, tapi bila diberi amanah ini saya akan memikul, menggalas dengan penuh tanggungjawab. InsyaAllah akan memberi komitmen penuh untuk memastikan jurang pembangunan khususnya di antara wilayah ini dapat kita dapatkan.
Saya ingat kali ini Jemaah Menteri Perpaduan yang kita ada sekarang ini memerlukan lebih banyak kolaborasi dan juga koordinasi di antara kementerian-kementerian. Jadi saya selain daripada perkara asas lah, maksudnya Kementerian Ekonomi sudah pasti kena pastikan bahawa kita ada perancangan untuk melonjakkan aktiviti ataupun kegiatan ekonomi tertentu yang membawa lebih banyak nilai tambah. Yang itu perkara yang semua orang tahu. Cuma bagaimana kita nak pastikan ada sinergi yang baik dengan segala kementerian yang lain. InsyaAllah saya ingat dalam 1-2 minggu ini kita akan dapat gambaran dan juga arahan yang lebih jelas.
Saya rasa ini adalah satu lantikan yang penting sebab memang dari semalam saya telah menerima banyak panggilan daripada bukan saja daripada masyarakat India tapi daripada semua kaum, tetapi memang harapan masyarakat India itu memang saya nampaklah agak tinggi juga. Jadi saya juga selain daripada fokus kepada kerja-kerja kementerian, saya juga terpaksa menangani isu-isu yang berkaitan dengan masyarakat India pada masa yang samalah. Itu adalah harapan masyarakat India, saya nampak dengan jelas.
Of course, one of the key tasks will be to ensure that Malaysia continues to be an important destination for investment. We have various multilateral and bilateral agreements that we need to ensure continues in terms of making Malaysia competitive in the eyes of investors. And I believe that task is already a big task. But going forward, we need to ensure that Malaysia continues to achieve the momentum that we want to achieve, to ensure that we continue to be a country that will attract key investments, especially investments in the area that brings value to the country.
On this new cabinet, Professor Dr. Jeffrey Williams, non-resident senior fellow of the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER, speaks to Nightline. Prof, what are the elements, or rather characteristics of the cabinet which can address issues related to strengthening the economy and addressing the people's immediate concerns?
It is actually that with smaller ministries there is an opportunity for operational cost savings, and that can be really quite significant in terms of the overall budget. The second is that there will be greater focus in the smaller number of ministries, and that will also push for efficiency in terms of government implementation and government delivery, which is an extremely important structural reform that we need.
The Prime Minister's pick for Finance Minister is seen as pivotal for the economy, and he has decided to keep that portfolio. In your opinion, why do you think the Prime Minister is helming the Finance Ministry portfolio?
And when the Prime Minister is also the Finance Minister, or the other way around, the Finance Minister is also the Prime Minister, it means that you concentrate the level of decision-making, and it means that the decisions can be done without having to waste time seeking the support of the Prime Minister in order to persuade the Cabinet and then going through an extra layer of decision-making. The second reason is that Dato Sri Anwar is very, very good at economics. He has been a finance minister before. He is highly regarded internationally And I think that he knows the international economic community very well, and they know him. And so I think that he will be really very important as a key figurehead in spearheading economic policy going forward. And the third reason is that you need to have someone with authority. There will be some important decisions that need to be changed, and they need to be changed quickly. And there will be a lot of stakeholders who may be concerned about changes happening, particularly if those changes don't help them too much, or particularly if they are losing out as a consequence of those changes. And what that means is that you do need to have somebody with the authority of the Prime Minister in order to push forward those changes and to push back against resistance from various stakeholders in the civil service or in the wider stakeholder community. So that's also a very important factor as to why the Prime Minister should also be the Finance Minister.
However, since Datuk Sri Anwar unveiled his cabinet late Friday, there have been some mixed reactions to the Prime Minister helming this critical portfolio.
And I think what's important to see in order to reassure people is first that Datuk Sri Anwar has made a very clear statement that in terms of government procurement, there should be open and transparent tender processes and no more direct contracting and so on. And that type of thing will help us to see whether or not the procurement system is open and transparent, whether or not there are opportunities to improve the integrity of the procurement system and to identify and to seek out issues where there is allegations of corruption or inefficiency. And so these type of things must be included not just in the prime ministerial guidelines for procurement and the government guidelines for procurement, but also across all individual ministries, and all ministers should be held to account to the same level of integrity and transparency and accountability.
And for that, perhaps that's the reason the Prime Minister did say that he will lay down new rules for his cabinet, and that's to be happening on Monday. What type of rules would be good compared with that of the previous administration?
I also think that each of the ministers should be tasked with looking at a root and branch cost analysis of their ministries and trying to look for efficiencies and to root out wastage, and in particular to root out leakages. We know that there is a very large loss of money. The Auditor General every year tells us this, and there are international organizations too that have identified a very large cumulative loss of money from various forms of inefficiency, various forms of leakage, various forms, it has to be said, of downright criminality. And so each ministry must be given, each minister must be given the task of rooting that out, creating cost efficiencies, reducing the overall cost of the running the ministries, not just to save money, but to improve efficiency of delivery of policy, particularly when those policies are directly related to customer service or services to the people more generally, and to make sure that they emulate some of the best ministries and some of the best agencies. For example, Talent Corp is well known as being a wonderfully managed agency, and if ministries could follow that example in terms of management and delivery of service, then we would be in a very much better place.
Technocrats like former Petronas President and CEO Tan Sri Hassan Marakan are being roped in as advisors working on a pro bono basis. What type of advisory can they channel to the Prime Minister?
I would be in favour of a panel of independent forecasters, a panel of independent economic analysts, for example, from different think tanks and organisations who can look at the budget without fear or favour, and can look at particular economic policies without fear or favour. Part of the problem with having independent advisors is that the moment that you receive money from the government, you're no longer independent. And you're little more than a paid private management consultant. And that's not helpful, because paid private management consultants don't give independent advice. They give the advice that the client wants them to give. Whether that's the best advice or whether it could be done in a different way is a wholly different matter for a private consultant. I also think that we shouldn't just rely on elderly people with the greatest of respect. I do understand that they have a great deal of experience and qualifications, but we need to have a broad and diverse set of advisors which represents people right across the spectrum. That means younger people. It means people from professional backgrounds and non-professional backgrounds, people from civil society backgrounds, and it also, of course, there must be a balance in terms of gender and so on, and global and world outlook, actually, in order for you to get a full assessment and a full analysis of what the government is doing and what the government can do.
All right, thank you to Professor Dr. Jeffrey Williams of MIER. Moving on. The Unity Government Cabinet involves appointments made following discussions between the Prime Minister and party leaders to ensure a stable government capable of driving the country's development. Digital Communications Minister Fahmi Fazil, who is also Pakatan Harapan Communications Director, said the government is a unity government formed together, where important policies or decisions will be made through discussions. He said this was an important change in order to avoid mistakes that have occurred in past administrations since 2018, where the appointment of the cabinet is often made not according to the party's main leadership. Fahmi also stressed on the Prime Minister's commitment that the unity government would never interfere in judicial matters in any legal case. Earlier, Perikatan Nasional PN Chairman Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, in a statement, said that Datuk Sri Anwar had backtracked on the principle of good governance he espoused during the election campaign when he appointed alleged kleptocrats to the cabinet. Early voting for the Padang Serai parliamentary seat in Kedah and the Tioman state seat in Pahang has ended on Saturday evening. Pahang Election Commission Director Datuk Zamri Hamli said the two early voting centres for Tioman, with the centre at Tekit Police Station closing at noon, ahead of the centre at Rompin District Police Headquarters, which closed at 5 p.m. Datuk Zamri said the voting, which began at 8 a.m, went smoothly, adding that the percentage turnout for early voting for the Tioman seat was 95.88%. Meanwhile, the early voting centre for Padang Serai seat at Kulim District Police Headquarters, which opened at 8 a.m, closed at 2 p.m. A total of 319 police personnel registered as early voters at 3 of the centres, 76 of them for Padang Serai and 243 for Tioman. Elections for both constituencies were postponed following the deaths of contesting candidates, Pakatan Harapan's M. Karupaya for Padang Serai and Perikatan Nasional's Mat Yunus Ramli for Tioman. Karupaya, 69, died on November 16 of a suspected heart attack and health complications, while Mat Yunus, 61, died just several hours before polling began on November 19. The EC set polling day on December 7, with a campaigning period of 13 days beginning after nominations. Freight train derails after loud blast in Songkhla. News from the foreign front when we return. 5.7 magnitude earthquake hit Indonesia's main island of Java on Saturday, shaking the same town devastated by another quake last month that left more than 330 people dead. According to the United States Geological Survey, the quake struck on land at a depth of 112 kilometers and the epicenter was located 18 kilometers southeast of the West Java city of Banjar. Meanwhile, the country's meteorological agency gave a higher magnitude of 6.4 for the quake, which also shook Capitol buildings in Jakarta. The agency said the tremor had caused buildings to shake in West Java town of Garut, warning residents near the epicenter to beware of potential aftershocks. However, there were no immediate reports of casualties or threat of a tsunami. In Thailand, a freight train derailed after a loud bang that sounded like a bomb blast occurred on a track between Hat Nyai and Padang Besar stations in Sadao district of Songkhla on Saturday afternoon. The train, which was reportedly transporting rubber sheets to Malaysia, was approaching Klong Nge railway station when the incident happened. It was reported that 11 of the 20 cars went off the tracks, which were badly damaged. Fortunately, the 4 train staff, 2 drivers, 1 technician and another staffer were unhurt. Authorities said they are investigating whether the cause was an accident or an explosion, adding that the Padang Besar Hat Nyai route may need to be closed for several days for repairs. The Myanmar junta handed out at least 7 more death sentences this week, taking the tally of those on death row to 139 since February 2021. The United Nations accused the military government of using capital punishment as a tool to crush opposition, calling for a suspension of all executions and for Myanmar's military rulers to place a moratorium on the use of the death penalty. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said at least 7 university students were sentenced to death behind closed doors on Wednesday, and there are reports that as many as 4 more youth activists were also sentenced on Thursday. He stated that the military continues to hold proceedings in secretive courts, which is in violation of basic principles of fair trial and contrary to core judicial guarantees of independence and impartiality. Actions from the 2022 World Cup when we return. Sports football, the 2022 World Cup. Switzerland took the remaining last 16th spot for a showdown with Portugal at the World Cup on Friday after a 3-2 win over Serbia in a bad-tempered match that secured them second place in Group G. Switzerland took the lead through Sherdan Shaqiri's deflected shot in the 20th minute, making the winger nicknamed the Pocket Rocket the first player from his country to score at 3 World Cups. Their joy only lasted 6 minutes with Serbia, needing a win to have any chance of progressing, scoring twice through Alexander Mitrovic and Dusan Vlahovic to turn the game around. But Switzerland responded with 2 goals either side of the break from Bril Embolo and Remo Friula to prolong their stay in Qatar while eliminating the Serbs. The win sealed second spot in the group with 6 points, level with group winners Brazil, and the Swiss will next face Portugal for a place in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, a late goal by skipper Vincent Abubakar ended Cameroon's 20-year wait for a win at the World Cup as the indomitable Lions bowed out in style by beating a much-changed Brazil 1-0 at the Lusail Stadium on Friday. With qualification already in the bag after wins over Serbia and Switzerland, Brazil still won Group G ahead of Switzerland on goal difference and will face Group H runners-up South Korea, who beat Portugal 2-1 in the next round. Couple nabbed with 9.5 million ringgit worth of shabu. This and more after this short break. In Kelantan, police have crippled a syndicate smuggling in shabu with the arrest of a couple and seizure of 9.5 million ringgit worth of the drugs in Kampung Batu Jong, Kuala Krai on Friday. State Police Chief Datuk Muhammad Zaki Harun said it was the biggest seizure made by a patrol car unit MPV. It was understood that authorities stopped a vehicle driven by a local couple after it was seen moving in a suspicious manner. They then discovered 11 gunny sacks, each containing packages wrapped in aluminium foil, suspected to be shabu. Datuk Muhammad Zaki said all the seized drugs, weighing 264 kilograms, are believed to be for the Klang Valley market. The couple were remanded for 7 days until December 9th to assist the investigation under the Dangerous Drugs Act. Thousands of furry fandom flocked to the city of Rosemont, Illinois to kick off Midwest Fur Fest 2022, the world's largest furry convention. Visuals of the 4-day festival wrap up Nightline this time around. I'm Nadia Azmi. Thank you for watching and stay safe.